Lunar Lander! Released in 1979 by Atari, this game was basically a lunar lander simulation. Now, the game was inspired by Moonlander, which was written by Jack Burness in 1973 as a demo for the DEC GT40 Vector Graphics Terminal. In this version of the game, you used a light pin to control your thrust and rotation. It also had a neat feature where if the player would land on the exact right spot, a McDonald's would appear. The astronaut would then leave the lander, walk over to the McDonald's, and order himself a Big Mac to go, and then walk back to his lander and take off. That's pretty funny. Now, the cabinet for a lunar lander is predominantly blue for the side art. The side art's pretty cool. It looks like a little space station floating on there. On the front of the machine, though, there's just the marquee, Lunar Lander. There's no graphics around the display itself. It's just a big open black box there. So it's a pretty neat-looking cabinet. It's also very heavy. Now, the control panel for a Lunar Lander is pretty cool looking. The first thing you're going to notice is the huge lever that you can move forward and back in the center of the console. This controls your thrust of your lander, and it's fairly accurate. Of course, you have, the standard, you got the select button to the side to select one of your 5 different play modes. You have a start button, then you have your rotate left, rotate right buttons, and you have the abort button. Now, if you see yourself getting ready to crash into a mountainside, you would hit this abort button to make the lunar lander, accelerate upwards and get yourself out of the situation. But if you wait too long, even the abort button will not help you. Now, as I said, there are 4 different missions that you can play. The first one's the training mission, which has very light gravity, very light friction from the atmosphere, and controlled rotation. A cadet mission has moderate gravity with no friction and also controlled rotation. A prime mission has very strong gravity with no friction and controlled rotation. And then the command mission, which is moderate gravity, no friction, and rotational momentum. That is, if I hit one of the rotate keys and let off, your lunar lander will continue to rotate slowly and eventually stop. So that's the most realistic version of Lunar Lander to play. And also it's one of the hardest versions to play. An interesting piece of trivia, this game actually appeared in the 1984 film The Philadelphia Experiment. Pretty cool. Also, this game was first registered on June 17, 1980, along with Asteroids with the Copyright Office. There was only a short run of this game produced. Most of them were converted over to the new game, Asteroids. So you can actually find some Asteroids games out there in a Lunar Lander cabinet. Atari did donate a gold edition of Lunar Lander to the Science Center in Syracuse, New York. I need to go see that. Now let's take a look at some of the gameplay and talk about it as I play the game. Alright, let's insert some coins. Every time you insert a coin, you get more fuel. So that's kind of neat. And I'm going to start on the training level. So here we go. You can see the flashing landing pads. We have like 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x. So if you successfully land on one of those pads, you get your landing score, depending on how well you land, multiplied by that landing pad number. For example, if you make a good landing, you get 50 points. So if I land on a ×4 landing pad, that's 200 points I get. Plus you get 50 more fuel units as well. Now if I do a hard landing, I only get 15 points. And of course if you crash, you only get 5 points. Now the thing you gotta keep in mind is when you're trying to land, you want to make sure your vertical speed is less than 15, which you can see over on the right hand side, very bottom, vertical speed, less than 15, and your horizontal speed less than 31, which is the second up from the bottom on the right hand side, the horizontal. If you approach a landing pad above those numbers, you're going to crash. If your lander is not centered on a pad, it'll crash. So here we come. And of course, if you have a problem where your lander is going to crash, you can't get over, you can always hit the abort button, which that uses like 150 to 200 units of fuel. Here we go. Oh, almost got it. A little more. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, one more to try for a harder pad this time. Okay, my vertical speed is getting a little high. Get over past this mountaintop. Ooh, move over. Now I like how it zooms in as you get close to the mountains. That's a neat effect. Oh, I think I'm coming in too hot. Oh boy. Ooh, go over. Oh geez. Oh, the board. Oh. Yep, that's what happens when you crash. Now let's try the game on the commander level. Now this has inertia. So you can see I can rotate my Lunar Lander module all the way around. So I also gotta give it some side thrust as well to keep it from spinning out of control. Whoa. Yeah, whoa. Yeah, this is a pretty hard version of the game. Oh man. Oh geez. Oh man, that gravity's terrible. Look at that. Oh! Oh! Rats. I'll try it one more time. Oh man. I'm doing pretty good on the horizontal speed. I'm almost lined up. Oh, I'm low on fuel. Oh, great. Oh, jeez. Hit the abort. Oh, no. Oh. And that's what happens when you run out of fuel. Well, now let's take a look at some ports on other systems. First up, we're going to take a look at the Fairchild Channel F. Now, this is a very rudimentary Lunar Lander game, but it's not too bad. The sound effects are kind of annoying, but otherwise it's pretty fun. Get over there. Here we go. Yeah. As you can see, the landing pad changes position. Oh! Oops. Ta-da! Awesome. Hey, I'm getting better at this now. I like the random terrain generated below. It's pretty cool. And I crashed. Next up, let's take a look at the Odyssey II version. Now, in this version, you have to land your lander first, and then you have to take back off and rendezvous with the spaceship orbiting above. Like that. There we go. Sound effects are pretty good in this. It's basically a one-button game. You just press the action button and that's it. You don't steer or anything. Oh, I missed it. Oh, oops. That's what you don't do. Next up, let's take a look at Lunar Lander that's on the Atari Flashback 2. Now, this one's kind of unique to where you actually move your joystick forward, intermittently to increase your throttle, then pull back on it intermittently to decrease your throttle. So it kind of simulates the arcade game's analog input in that respect. This version of the game is extremely hard on the Flashback. I have yet to successfully land the lander on the Flashback. Plus, it's awful slow. Oh, come on. Ah. Well, now let's take a look at the game on the Game Boy Advance. Now, this is pretty much a real good port of the arcade version for the Game Boy. Pretty much looks exactly like the arcade game. Now, you don't have any kind of analog input on this. You just basically hit the button that activates the thrusters. The B button activates the board. So you just got to pulse the button to slow down. It's not too bad a version of the game. Down the mountainside. I'm heading for that 5X over there, I think. Maybe not. Maybe 2X. Coming in good. Just like the arcade, I gotta have it below 31 and 15 for vertical speed, so I can land successfully. There we go, almost. Ah! Now next up is one of my favorite versions of Moonlander for a home console. This is on the Vetrix. This was a homebrew Moonlander game. Now there's no sound, but this thing is awesome. It makes real good use of the analog stick on the Vetrix. So your analog stick is the thrust. Then you have your two buttons, 1 and 2, to rotate your capsule right and left. And then the 4 key is your abort. And I crashed. Now this game was written by Clay Cowgill over at Good Deal Games. Hey, I landed. Awesome. Going to a new moon, Smith Engineering. Now on the next moon on the Vetrix version, you'll have increased gravity, plus you'll have a side force. You can see my capsule's drifting off to the left. So I got to fight that to try to get on a landing pad. Ooh. Ooh. Whoa. Ooh. Come on. Oh. Oh! Oh, man. Almost at it. Come on. Get back over there. Oh. It is a very challenging version of the game. I just wish it had sound. Oh! Well, that was Lunar Lander, a great vector game from Atari released in 1979. If you ever find this at an arcade, I highly recommend trying out. It's extremely challenging and fun. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.